All right, welcome to this episode of the She is Extraordinary podcast. Today, we're addressing a subject that I don't think I've ever talked about before on the show, but it's a biggie, whether you're a corporate exec or an entrepreneur, and that is burnout. And today, I'm joined by a burnout expert, Jessica Rector. Hey there, Jessica. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am so excited to connect with you on this because I work with women entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of feeling of frustration and, lack of energy. And I think that leads to burnout. So I'm so excited. But ladies, let me tell you a little about Jessica. She is on mission to transform lives. And I love that. She's a burnout and mind wellness expert. She is a very sought after keynote speaker. She's the author of 10 books and is, of course, a #1 best-selling author. And prior to becoming this speaker that everyone wants to listen to, she was a #1 sales producer and leader at a Fortune 100 company. So once again, welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, wow. I am so excited to talk about burnout, like what it is, the symptoms, strategies to help with it, and how to even prevent it. But first, I didn't tell you about this, but I know you're good on the fly. Okay. I'd love to address a really important topic, especially for ladies, and that is confidence. As I was reading your bio, you talk about how you know firsthand how you've turned self-doubt, second guessing, and questioning into confidence, bigger actions, and massive results. So I would love for you to start the show talking a little bit about that.
Sure. So basically what happened was I got pregnant and it was unexpected, not planned. I'd broken up with my boyfriend 3 days before, and then it was like, surprise. And when I told him the news, he said, well, we're going to have to get married because I'm not having a baby out of wedlock. And I said, well, it's a good thing you're not having the baby. And after a few conversations with him, just realized that I wanted more for my life. Like it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good match. Mm-hmm. And so throughout my pregnancy, I just had all these negative thoughts that really kind of swarmed around me. How did this happen? Why did this happen? What am I going to do? Now I'm going to have to stop my career and go and get a real, 8 to 5 job. People aren't going to hire me. All these type of things started really engulfing me. And unbeknownst to me, I was really living in shame. And then once my son was born, I realized he's the biggest blessing of my life. And my continual learning lesson, right? I learned more from him than I have in like years and decades before him. But I started doing a lot of research around where all those negative thoughts came from, why was I having them, and really peeling back the layers and getting to the core issue of that. And when I was able to do that, I founded a process of identifying those negative thoughts and really turning them into positive action and bigger results. And I think a lot of times what happens is that we get stuck in those negative thoughts, in that negative thinking, and in that pattern of they're not going to hire me, they're not going to like me, what are they going to think about me, say, do, all that stuff. And when we do that, it lowers our confidence the more that we keep telling ourselves those stories that have been on repetition. And most of them are on repetition from when we were younger. One of the other topics outside of burnout that I talk about is called Blaze Your Brain, turning negative thoughts into positive action, because that impacts how you show up. It impacts your confidence, how you communicate, engage, lead. It literally impacts everything you're thinking. And those stories that you tell yourselves and that you continue to tell yourself over and over are the most important stories you'll ever tell. But oftentimes we don't spend time to identify what those stories are. And they just keep repeating, and they start showing up in our lives. And sorry, I have this one piece of hair right here. Do you ever have that one piece of hair that's like sticking out?
I love that. I think it looks very sweet.
And I keep looking at it going, oh my gosh, that's one piece of hair. But, so it starts showing up, and that's why I keep messing with my hair, because I'm like, that one piece of hair. It starts showing up in every other area of our life, oftentimes without us realizing it. And I always ask people, like, when was the last time you thought about what you thought about? Because if you're like most people, you just think the same way you've always thought, which elicits the same actions, behaviors, and results. So it's really about taking time, pausing, and thinking about what you're thinking about. And if you change how you think, it also changes your confidence. It also changes how you view yourself. It also changes how you start showing up. And, I was always a pretty confident person. However, things happen in lives, and listening to those stories that I told myself for so long really got in the way, especially during those 9 months of my pregnancy. As an outgoing extrovert, I started staying inside, didn't go out, didn't socialize, or wore long flowy dresses so people wouldn't even see and notice that I was pregnant, really trying to hide it. But when I was able to identify these stories that I was playing in my head, and how they were showing up as truth, as fact, because the more you tell yourself those stories, the more they show up as your truth. And when you peel back, like I mentioned, peeling back those layers, and you can get to the core of it and recognize that they're not true, you have the power to change them. But it's first being aware that you're telling yourself these stories and these thoughts that are getting in your way, and then saying, where's that coming from? Why is it coming from? And recognizing that it's not true, that you have limitless potential, that the only person who puts limitations on you is you. And yeah, it's a story that maybe that you heard when you were a teenager, or when you were 5, or however old, but you've repeated that story. And so oftentimes I say, you're allowing someone else's story, someone else's opinion to outweigh what you know about yourself to be true. You know you're awesome. You know you're amazing. You know you can do it, but you're allowing someone from years ago, something that they said, to overpower you. And it's time to take back that power and control. And in the process of doing that, little by little, you gain your confidence. So it's about really, and the more you can recognize those negative thoughts, you can change it in the moment, meaning like you say, oh, that's a negative thought. Okay. And then you can take action through that. And every time you're able to do that, when you can recognize those negative thoughts in the moment, and every time you can take action, even a small action through them, it builds your confidence up little by little.
Wow. We are totally of like mind on that. I often say when we were little, we thought we could do anything. I could be the president. I could be a ballerina. I could be a princess.
Exactly.
And somehow we get to be a certain age, and all of a sudden we're like, ooh, that's not reasonable for me to even try that, or me, before I went to law school, I was raised poor. So I didn't think people like me could go to law school until one day I went out in the workforce, got in front of a lot of lawyers. I was selling dictation equipment to them. And I realized sure as heck I can do that. I don't care where I came from. So
yes.
I'm with you on that. That is so good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's transition to burnout. Burnout is a word that is so used, I think maybe even overused. So when you talk about burnout, help us to understand what that means to you.
So I never put a definition on burnout. And the reason why is oftentimes when people hear a definition, they'll say, oh, well, I guess that's not me, because I don't fit that whole definition. So that's just not me, especially women. If they don't fit at all, it's not, it's got to be something else. What else could it be? Right. And so I never give a definition of burnout, because the thing is through my years in researching burnout and working with people in burnout, people who are burned out know they are burned out. People who are stressed know that they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling pressured, and that they're on the way to burnout. So even without having a definition of burnout, people instinctively know what it is, what it feels like, what it looks like in them, because it's not typically how they show up, right? They're usually more energetic. They are normally happy-go-lucky, yes, positive people. They normally are high achievers and they get more done. What's going on? If you're starting to see those type of things where you're in a bad mood all the time, you don't have the energy, you're not sleeping at night, you're not getting enough done, those are kind of some signs to start looking out for. But I never like to give a definition, because I like people to go on more how they feel as opposed to this is what it has to be. So
yeah, see, I really appreciate that, and you've studied it, so I totally get that's, and I also understand how women think. Oh, it's not that. It's that time of the month.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I'm just a little tired. It's not.
They'll brush it away and say, well, Jessica said it's that. So, okay, maybe I'm not really burned out. But, and especially with women, one of the things I hear most often these days is I'm burned out on life. Years ago, before the pandemic, in 2019, the World Health Organization declared it as a workplace syndrome. But what's interesting is in the last year, people have started to recognize it's not just work for the workplace. It is an everyday, every place kind of thing. It can happen in family. It can happen in your personal life. It can happen, recreation. It can happen in a variety of different ways. But most people still say, okay, well, it's in relation to work. But when you think of burned out on life, oftentimes when I'm hearing that, it's like everything's burning you out, and I can't identify it because it's not just one thing, it's all these things. But the more that you don't identify what it is that's burning you out and what's leading to it, the more you're going to sit in it and the more it's going to overtake your life. So it's important to identify the very specific things, whether it's home, whether it's kids, whether it's, getting dinner every night, making decisions, no matter what it is, it's important to identify what's leading to burnout so you can put strategies in place to help you tackle it.
Okay, that is really good. And I know that you speak a lot for corporations because burnout's affecting the workplace. So there are some ladies that listen to my show. They're not all entrepreneurs. Some of them are in corporate life or professional life, and they're thinking about starting a business. So just educate us a bit on the impact that burnout has in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. So I speak in corporations, organizations, events. I do long-term programs with organizations, and it's the number one epidemic hitting the workforce. So if you think it's not, like if you have a team and you're in corporate America and you think, or even in, a private company, if you have a team, it's impacting your team. 79% of the workforce is in burnout. It doesn't discriminate. It hits every job, every industry, every position. And so there's people on your team now who are being impacted. Oftentimes, if you don't have an open dialogue and an open culture, though, is you'll find that team members don't want to admit to it. They have this fear that creeps up because they don't know how it's going to be received. Are you going to take away responsibility? Are you going to think I can't do my job? Are you going to let me go? So all this fear creeps up. So they tend to keep it to themselves. What happens is when they're keeping to themselves, it's impacting their mental health, and mental health impacts burnout. So you're creating this vicious cycle in the workforce of burnouts leading to mental health issues. Mental health issues is leading to burnout. So it's all completely intertwined. So you've got to put things in place that are helping the teams. Now, it's really kind of twofold. It's not just individuals' responsibility. It's not just an organization. They got to work together to really prevent and address burnout.
Okay, and I want to address that in one moment. But I also think that as you're talking, and as the women I work with are entrepreneurs, many have six-figure, multi-six-figure, and they're telling me they're stressed. And they may or may not use the word burned out, but I can see how that same cycle would apply, especially for those that are have a lean team. And so they're doing too much. So let's talk about strategies to help with burnout.
So first of all, the first thing is to identify what exactly is leading to your burnout. Oftentimes you've got to peel back and get to the root cause of what's really going on. And oftentimes the root cause isn't what you think it is. That's where someone like me comes in to help do a diagnostic and assessment to find out what that root cause is. And, or root cause. I say it a little bit different in case you're like, what's that? root cause of what it is. That's important so you can really find out what's going on, and what's going on with one person may not be what's going on with another person. So, and if you're in an organization or if you have a team, something you can send out as a survey to them to get their feedback, to get their insight. Other things that you can do. So depending upon if you're wanting it for yourself or if you're wanting it for your organization and team, some of them kind of coincide. One of the things that you can do, a strategy to help you with burnout, is to put yourself on your plate, which you hear of that a lot of times. But if you think of, and I don't have them near me right now, but if you think of like this is your plate, you have all these balls that are on your plate. So you have family, you have illness, you have your team, maybe financial issues or budgets at work or more work that you've got to get done in less time, less resources, all these things. But every time I ask people that, no one ever says themselves, right? They don't ever put themselves on the plate. And so you have all these other things you're trying to juggling, things you're trying to do and take care of, but you're nowhere on your plate. So the first thing is to start putting yourself on the plate. What does that look like? What does that mean? How can you start taking better care of yourself? It's not a luxury, it's a necessity, because you can't keep doing, being, and going without taking care of yourself. Think of it as a car that overheats, right? If you're not refueling and refilling that car, checking in to make sure it's got gas, to make sure that it's got water, it's going to overheat or you're going to run out of gas. It's the exact same concept. If you're not checking in, if you're not pausing, stopping just for a brief moment and say, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Right? You can do a 2-word check-in with yourself, 2 words of how you're feeling. Happy and excited, stressed and sad, timid and anxious. It's also something that you can do with your team. It takes just a few minutes, but it also allows you to check in with other people, colleagues, friends, family members, and just letting people stop and pause. Because most of the time, from the minute you get up in the day to the minute you go to bed, you're going, you're doing, you're being, you're constantly, and you're not pausing to even check in and say, hey, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How am I showing up? Do I need to be more present? Those type of things. So, and then if somebody gives you red flags like stressed and sad, anxious and timid, stuff like that, you can follow up with them to have a conversation at a later date to say, talk to me, Goose, what's going on? You said stressed and sad. I'm here to help. How can I help? And then also make sure that you're creating better boundaries in your life. A lot of times, if you're working from home these days, especially in the last 18 months, when you're working from home, people are having problems turning off work, meaning they're picking up the phone at 7 o'clock at night, answering emails at 10:30. Everything's got to be done now, or it's an emergency, or it's urgent. I got to respond. I got to talk to him. And they're not giving themselves permission to say, no, this is my time. I got to eat. I got to spend with family. Make sure you're creating those boundaries in your life. And then also, there's a couple other quick things, making sure that you're educating others around you. If you have a team, making sure you're educating them on burnout, making sure that they're aware of things that can lead to burnout, bringing in a burnout program or someone like a consultant or someone to help you around burnout, because it's not just a one and done. It's not going to stay just compartmentalized. It'll trickle over into other areas of your life. So it's important to have something long-term in place. And then also, when you feel the most stressed, when you feel the most burned out, when you feel the most overwhelmed, the number one thing you take out of your day is fun. So it's important to schedule more fun. And it's not something you can say, oh, yes, Jessica, I'm going to have more fun. You literally have to schedule it, because you will get so busy in your day and you will forget to have fun. And the day will be done and you'll realize I didn't have fun. So just like you schedule lunch, and if you don't schedule lunch, like you need time to eat, not time to eat and work at the same time, time to just eat, time to recharge, time to re-energize. Just like you schedule meetings, you've got to schedule 15 minutes of fun in your day. So if you have a team, you can do something like a puzzle where people are working together to create this masterpiece. Puzzles release dopamine, so it also keeps you in a better mood and optimistic at the same time. You can go out and do something fun like axe throwing or ropes course, different things like that, but you've got to incorporate fun every single day.
Wow, I love all of that. Oh my goodness. And when I think about self-care, I think women, and I know I'm guilty of this, I put everybody else first. Mm-hmm. It's, and you have one son, I have 3, and they are like you, they're they're the joy and loves of my life. And so anything for them, oh, is there time left over for me? And that's not good. That's just really not good. I want to go back to the root causes. And can you just throw out a couple of the top root causes that you find in your work? Just because I want to kind of get my head around what those could be.
So, well, the first thing is when I won't give you like, okay, well, here are the root causes of what can be, because that's why people bring me in to really do a diagnostic and say, okay, let's figure out what these root causes are. Oftentimes, I will tell you, if you are on a team, oftentimes that root cause is leaders. And leaders may not want to hear that, but oftentimes it is them. Like, how are they contributing to their people's burnout, which is sometimes hard for them to hear because they're the ones typically bringing me in. But it's also, you have to look at how you're playing a role in burnout. So I put up a post recently asking a question like, who's responsible for burnout? Is it organizations or is it individuals? And it was funny because most people said organizations, but it is in fact both people, right? Because there's really three components to burnout: your habits, environment, and culture. And so, but you can be doing everything as an organization. You have great environment, amazing culture, but then if an individual habits are not on track, then they're going to be burned out, meaning that they're not getting quality sleep, or they're not sleeping through the night. They insist on staying late to get work done. They're not taking PTO, even though your organization offers unlimited PTO. Like there's things that you can do as an organization, but you can't control the individual. And there's individual habits play a vital role in burnout. So it's about taking a deep dive into those three components, to give you a hint, those three components to figure out what that root cause is.
That's so good. And, I especially appreciated early on in this episode when you kept talking about identify, be specific on some of the various things we've talked about. And that's why I just had to go specific a little bit on the root causes.
No, I appreciate it. But here's also the key, Judy, is that you have to be intentional and strategic. Meaning it can't just be willy-nilly. Well, I'm gonna think about it now, and then I'm not gonna think about how to prevent burnout for another 4 months. And then, oh, well, it's Christmas and we're stressed because there's a lot going on around the holidays. Now I'm gonna think about it again. You have to be intentional with it every single day. Typically, burnout's a slow creeper, meaning that it happens over the course of time. But in the last 18 months, with so many changes being thrust upon people in so many different ways, burnout happened very, very quickly. But if you're not putting anything in place to help you prevent it, or if you're in it to help you get through it, you will continue to stay in it. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is to get out of.
Wow. That's a convicting sentence right there. That's a convicting thought. Like, if we don't take care of ourselves and identify these root causes and fix them as best we can, then it's going to be harder. Okay. That just makes me more excited to say, okay, anyone out there?
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself. Okay. And be real with yourself and say, okay, what is this? What is really the root of this issue? Okay. So how about this one? What are some misconceptions out there around this idea of burnout?
So one of them is that you have to hate your job in order to get burnout, and you can love your job and still get burned out. So again, if you can love what you do, but maybe your leader is not on track, or your leader isn't identifying that burnout is even an issue, they're ignoring the problem. They're thinking, can't happen here. We have a great culture. We have a great environment. We give our people everything they need. Well, they're not taking into consideration that person, when they leave work, they have other things that go on. Maybe you're piling more work on them. The deadlines are tighter. You're expecting them to do the job of 2 people. So there's things like that, right? You can still love your job and still be burned out. And then vacation will cure burnout. It will not cure burnout. That is a misconception. Like, you can go on vacation. I encourage people to go on vacation, to completely unplug, to go recharge, rejuvenate themselves. It's not going to cure burnout, because what's going to happen is you're going to go on vacation and you're going to go back to your life of the exact same things that you're doing in the exact same ways. Burnout's just waiting for you when you get back. Meaning, if your days that lead you to burnout don't change, if nothing in your day changes, you're going to get burned out. Like, you have to literally, that's what I was talking about, being intentional. You have to put things in your day, and you have to be very strategic throughout your day to make sure that burnout doesn't have a chance to happen.
Wow. This is I'm a thinker, so I'm going to be listening back to this a couple of times. This is so good. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Well, and it's interesting because people say, oh, well, I'm burned out. I'm going to go on vacation. It's like, okay, awesome. Go on vacation. But you're going to come back and you're going to be all rejuvenated for a couple days. And then guess what? Boom. You're going to wonder why you're in burnout again, because you didn't put anything in your days to change your day. It looks the exact same. And so you're just going to get burned out in a few days, and you're going to wonder why you're burned out again. And you're going to say, I need another vacation.
Yeah, it kind of sounds a little bit analogous to the definition of insanity. We keep thinking we're going to get a different result, but we're doing the same thing. So no, that doesn't jive. Okay. Yes. So I love that you were talking about the importance of habits. So tell us about this awesome freebie that you're making available to our listeners, how to develop better habits.
Yes. So they can go to my website, justcorrector.com, and download my free habit tracker. They can also get their smartphone out right now and text 66866, which is probably easiest because they have their phone probably nearby, 66866, and text the word burnout. And then it'll ask for their email and first and last name. They have to put all three things in: email, first and last name, and they can download this habit tracker. It's one of the major components of things that lead to burnout. So what it includes is the first page is going to be tips on how to get success out of this habit tracker. And then the second page is a list of all different habits that lead to really great things and habits that you can implement in your life. And then there's several pages of blank pages for you to put in the good habits in your life that you have that are working well for you. And then maybe taking one or two from the list that I've shared and kind of creating your own habit tracker. But here's the caveat. I encourage you not to implement all of the habits that I have listed all at once, because that will be overwhelming, stressful, and lead you to burnout. And that's the exact opposite thing that we want to do, because you're not going to implement any of them if it's too hard. Here's 20 things, go and implement them. You're not going to do that. It sounds too hard. So just implement one, maybe two. And once you have those down and you do those consistently, then you can implement another one. But we want to make it super, super easy for you.
Okay, that's great. And I'm going to leave all that information in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. My last question is this. Yeah. This is called the She Is Extraordinary podcast. So I would love for you to share with our listeners an extraordinary woman in your life and tell us why she's extraordinary.
Ooh, put me on the spot. I did not, it's very interesting. And I hate not to answer that question. But I don't have an extraordinary woman in my life. I have an extraordinary man in my life, and he's my 8-year-old son. And the reason why I say that is because in 8 years, I've learned more from him than I've learned from any other individual in my life. And I believe women can be extraordinary, men can be extraordinary, grandparents can be extraordinary, kids can be extraordinary. But I've learned so much from him. And if we're open to learning, there's so many people that can teach us things, no matter their gender, right? They can teach us so many things. And I think for me, being open to receiving what he's teaching me has greatly changed my life. Mm-hmm. And it's the small things, like him wanting to go down a hill, and he says, "Mommy, you go first." And I said, "You've never asked me to go first on anything." That's what I say. "But you go first. If it works for you, then I'll do it." But I knew I had to do it in order for him to do it. And it was scary when I got to the top and we were on our bikes going down it. And it was scary, but I did it. I had all those negative thoughts come in, and I took action through those negative thoughts. And then he went and did it, but he pushed me and help me up level my comfort zone by doing that, building my confidence along the way, right? Because he wanted to do it. I knew I needed to do it. So I think every person listening can be their best extraordinary self when we allow ourselves to be open to what other people are teaching us, no matter their age, no matter their gender. And just saying, yes, I can. And in the process of doing that, it builds our confidence. It helps us be more amazing, helps us reach new potential, and helps us be more extraordinary in the process.
Wow. I so love that. And I think I told you, I have 3 boys. They're 20, 22, and almost 25. Parenting is sanctifying work. And I'm totally with you. What they continue to teach me blows me away. And they're younger than me, and just like your son. Well, I think it's a beautiful sentiment, and obviously you're a terrific mom. And one last point, if you have another moment, I would love to address this quick topic of, you are a professional speaker, and lately you brought your son on stage.
I did.
I think that's a beautiful thing, to encourage your children to kind of see your world. So I'd love you to just touch on that for a bit.
Yeah, so he's been asking me to come since he was 3. He's like, Mommy, just put me in the suitcase, roll me up on stage, and I'll just peek my head out and wave to everybody
Oh,
and then pop down and wave. And I said, they're not going to listen to anything I have to say. They're going to be like looking at you too much, thinking, oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's funny. And so I was always really hesitant because I'm like, okay, buddy. And he'd been bugging me. And then we were going to do it last year. COVID hit, all events canceled. So this year in the summertime, I said, you know what? I have some in-person events when the event started opening up again. And I asked him, do you want to come? And he said, yes. And he's written 2 books. So he's the youngest U.S. published author. So he comes on stage at the very end and, we'll go over before he comes on stage. Okay, this is who's in the audience. What do you want to say to them? What's your message? How do you want to inspire them or empower them? And he'll share his message, 3 to 5 minutes of him sharing whatever comes to mind. Normally he starts off being funny, saying something funny, and everyone laughs. But the interesting thing is we've done it several times, and he's like, I think they like me better than you, Mommy. And I'm like, I'm glad that, and they do. They love him. They come up and say, I'm your biggest fan. That's so awesome. And he'll say, if you buy my book, I'll sign it for you. And so he gets book signings going on, autographing books and stuff. But really it's about bringing him on and when the audience is right, like not every audience is right, for him to share his message. And it's, and typically it's like in the education field or, something like that. So the people in the audience can see that they're on the front lines, but the impact that they're making to kids and how, and he'll share a story of how someone's impacted him or something that relates to the audience. Wow. He's been we've done it in the dental industry as well, and how dentists impact him and how he, and how he loves going to the dentist and stuff like that. So if he has a story that's kind of similar that to the audience and they can find value in or know that they're, what they're doing is creating that ripple effect to encourage them to keep doing it and keep being awesome. That's when we bring him up on stage and they love it. Yeah. And he loves it. And he's like, I love inspiring people. When can I go to the next one? So,
oh my gosh, yeah. He is an aspiring keynote speaker like his mama.
Yeah, he is.
That's amazing. But I have to say, I disagree on the dentist. That's one thing I do not like. So
I've always liked going to the dentist. I know.
Not me. But listen, Jessica, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, sharing, these strategies against burnout. It's so important. So once again, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Loved it.
All right. Well, ladies, thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment, leave a rating and a review. It is so important and helps us to get higher in the ranks. Let us know what you think. And if you have a guest you'd like to have appear on the show, just reach out. You can be reached at Judy Weber Co, wherever you are. So once again, thank you for watching, ladies, and we'll see you next time.